Hi everyone, my name's Matt. I designed the cover for The Economist. Join me as I show you how to design a great magazine cover. I'm the deputy cover designer for The Economist magazine, so I work with a team of editors, the creative director and other designers each week, and it's my job to come up with ideas and concepts for the artwork which goes on the cover. I sometimes illustrate that myself, I commission other illustrators and art direct them, and then I do the design and layout for the final cover. I live in a small town called Malmesbury, which is in the UK. I started my career by designing lots for the music industry, doing album covers, lots of band t-shirts, and then moving on from that I really got into editorial design and designing magazine covers. In this course I'm going to be showing you tools for how to come up with your own ideas and concepts for artwork. We're going to be looking at creating those in Illustrator and Photoshop, and then we're going to be moving through to InDesign to do some design and layout. Despite newsstand sales being down, I think magazine covers are as in the public eye as they ever have been. Magazines and publications are having to move their content online and onto social media to massive audiences. So more than ever, magazines have to be arresting pieces of graphic design that help to hook people in to engage with the content. So grab a coffee and your sketch pad and let's get designing some magazine covers. So to get started, like all design projects, you need a brief. For magazine covers and editorial design, the brief is often just to simply make a metaphorical shop window for the article. It doesn't need to give all the detail, all the nuance that the story has to say. It just needs to hook people in and give them a gist of what the article has to say. We're going to be designing a cover for a political and cultural magazine, something like The New Statesman, The Atlantic, or even The Economist. This style of magazine cover often relies on the interplay between the words and the artwork on the cover. You need both parts to help communicate what the story's saying. Normally at this stage, you might have the full story to read, but sometimes you might just have a subhead and a short blurb to go on, which is what we have for this course. Here's the subhead we'll be working with. Is AI-generated art damaging the creative industry? Illustrators and designers are understandably wary of new applications like DALL-E and Midjourney that create AI-generated images. Some argue that they can be a useful tool and should be embraced, while others decry they'll be the downfall of a creative industry. Next, we'll be moving on to making our own ideas and concepts for this story.
This video is brought to you by Issuu, the all-in-one platform to create and distribute beautiful digital content, from marketing materials and magazines to catalogs and portfolios, and so much more. From freelance designers to enterprise teams, Issuu is perfect for anyone who wants to create and share engaging content that stands out in a matter of minutes. It also works seamlessly with the tools you already use and love, like Canva, InDesign, MailChimp, Dropbox. Click the link in the description and start with Issuu today for free, or sign up for an annual premium account for a more customized experience. Get 50% off when you go to the link in the description and use the promo code Envato50.
In this next section, we're going to be looking at pop culture to help inspire our ideas. I've thought about films, TV, and music, and I've come up with 3 cultural references I think I can work with. Okay, so for this first idea, we're thinking about robots and AI and intimidating, scary examples of those in pop culture and things. So Daleks from Doctor Who, they're a really good example of robots and danger. Plus it has the added benefit of Daleks and the application DALL-E not being that far away from each other. What art, like visual references, can we tie together with Daleks to make an exciting looking artwork and cover? So I've been having a little think, and I've been wondering about if, the kind of cannon, the gun that they have on the front, swapping that out for a paintbrush instead of a cannon. So there's my lovely drawing. As you can see, it's a work of art, but It doesn't need to be brilliant. All it needs to show is basically the idea and something for a little prompt that I can remember. So our next idea is inspired by the Stanley Kubrick film 2001: A Space Odyssey. There's a character in that which is a computer with a human personality called Hal. Towards the end of the film, Hal famously turns out to be a bad guy. So I've been thinking about how we can get Hal into artwork in some way and tie art in there as well. So one good way of tying art into that could be by using like an ornate gold frame, which we can put around Hal. So it's quite an interesting juxtaposition of having a nice gold frame against this red dot, which sort of resembles evil and bad tech in some way. For the third idea, again, I've been looking at films, and one, it's actually a film poster I really like for the film Metropolis, slightly Art Deco style poster, which is a bit of a design classic. So I was wondering about how to, again, tie art into that in some way. So at the front, you've got so we can keep the robot person down the front, and then instead of buildings coming up behind them in the background, maybe it's just lots of pencils. Something like that. So to help you to come up with your own ideas, I'm going to show you this really useful tool, which is something I often use when I'm working on Economist covers. It's a really great way to help you to start to come up with your own ideas for your artwork and to help you combine two different elements into one image. Along one axis, I've got things which are related to art, so visual references for art, stuff like an easel, a painter's palette, paintbrush, a self-portrait, and then down this other axis are things which are the other side of the story, so AI and tech, that sort of thing. So mouse, arrow, robots, computer or laptop, and microchip. So the idea is in these sections in the grid, you draw what you get when you mix these two things together. So what happens if you mix a painter's palette with a robot? So I've drawn a robot hand holding the palette. So I'm going to begin filling in a few more of these spaces. Now, I'm not sure if all of them are going to work, but I think we might have a bit of luck with some of them. So what happens if you cross an easel with a mouse arrow? I think a nice little way of doing that would be a arrow actually hitting the canvas on the easel. And the other nice thing about using mouse arrows is they actually are an arrow, which is something which causes damage and inflicts a bit of damage to things. So I think that can work quite nicely already. So then moving on, what happens if you mix a paintbrush with a robot? So just kind of jumping off this, I have a little doodle of a robot I've done here. Something which has sparked an idea is the kind of antenna you might have coming out the top of a kind of typical 50s looking, boxy looking robot. So if you draw something like this, instead of having an antenna coming out, maybe they have lovely big paintbrushes for the antennae. So maybe there's something we can do with a laptop. Maybe a laptop can be like a snapping mouth, like it's kind of biting and chomping. So maybe it's you could do like a laptop chomping up some paintbrushes. So try and doodle that out quickly. And again, these drawings don't need to be the most beautiful looking things. These are just really quick little sketches to help keep a track of my thought process, really. And so you can go back later on and think a bit more objectively about them. So now we've got our ideas, I'm going to jump into Illustrator and Photoshop, take a few of these ideas and create the artwork for them. So we're going to kick off here in Illustrator. This is the idea we're going to be working on, the easel canvas with the arrow, the kind of digital mouse arrow coming in and hitting it. This is the same size as the magazine cover that we're going to
be eventually working with. And I've got this little sketch here to mostly kind of remind myself what I'm aiming for. So I've been thinking a lot about how to draw the easel, and I think the best way to do it is going to be coming at it from sort of a side angle. So I've been looking around lots on Envato Elements to find some stock imagery of easels and canvases and things, and I found this really nice 3D easel that they have on there, and we're going to be drawing it, executing this in quite a graphic, bold color execution. So again, this is a really useful reference to use to draw from, because we have the light hitting it from this angle, so these sides of the wood are all lit up, leaving the rest of it in shadow. So that's a really useful thing as we're drawing it as well, because that's sort of tells us what tones we should use and where. So we are just going to start by drawing around and sort of tracing the image. I think it's going to save us some time in the long run if I group all of those and just choose a light grey for now. As I keep on drawing the next few sections, I will kind of colour code those as well. As we come to start choosing some different colours, it will make life easier for the long run, in the long run, if they're already all grouped together. Okay, so I've selected those two things, and then a little neat trick, because there are lots of other pieces I've already drawn here. I just want to select this little one here, this one, and the top one that I've just drawn. So I have the other ones selected already. I'm going to hold down Shift, drag over those three things that I want to select, and it unselects the things I already have and just goes for the three that I just wanted to get. Neat little trick there. I'm going to group those ones together. And now I'm going to draw in the canvas. And I think after that, we'll be able to get to adding in the mouse arrow, and then we can start coloring everything in. Great. Okay. So if we hide the image away, we're left with this outline. That's looking good. Now to draw a mouse arrow, just really simply what I'm going to do, I've got my pen tool again. I'm going to draw one half of it, and then I'm going to sort of duplicate that half, so I get this, I guess, a perfectly symmetrical arrow. So I've got that selected. I'm going to use the reflect tool here, and I'm going to, with this little kind of crosshair cursor, click there. So this is the point that it's going to reflect from, and I'm going to hold down Option and click, and hold down Shift, and then I can duplicate that shape, and it brings the same. It kind of mirrors the image over here. And I'm going to take both these points and Command J, which now makes this a complete full shape. And there we have our mouse arrow. Here we go. Just angle it so it's coming in and hitting the canvas there. So in a moment I'm going to come back and draw over another little section, so you can't see the point, as if a point has gone in and hidden the canvas. So now the fun bit of starting to colour it in. So what we're going to do firstly is we're going to add a background. So I'm using the rectangle tool to draw in just a nice block of background colour in its own shape. So what I'm going to do is start by filling it with, I think I'm going to try a quite a popping blue background. I wonder if I can get any brighter than that still.
Here's a quick tip on choosing colours. When you're creating flat graphic artwork such as this, I'd recommend using some bold, saturated colours to help give the design definition and to help create some impact.
I think that looks quite good already. So I'm going to just lock that layer for now. So as I start to click on these things and change the colours, we're not gonna, the background colour isn't going to interfere as we start to click around. So I'm going to change it from a stroke to a fill again. I'm going to start with going for the most sort of obvious colourful light, which is just white. And then for the rest of them, let's try these shadowed areas. So if you just turn it to black already, that looks, I don't know, it does look quite cool and quite impactful already. Let's carry on with that in black for now. I kind of want it to pop and really, I want the colours to jump off each other in a really nice way. So let's carry on with that for now. And we're going to these pieces of these surfaces. I'm going to try a different colour for these. So I think maybe a red might look quite good. Let's try that out. And now here we're going to start coming into needing to ungroup some of these things, because this piece of wood here actually goes on top and joins to this one. At the moment it looks like it's going behind. So what we're going to need to do is ungroup some of these groups that I've made earlier, so that I can bring these ones, I think I'd take those to the back, but not too far back, because I want them to be in front of the background colour still. Now, this little piece here, we'll bring that in front. And the side of our canvas, we'll make that white as well. Now, I wonder if we might need to do, we're going to need some different colour for the front of the canvas. Black is going to be way too heavy, I think. I feel like you're still going to need to get there. It's a canvas. So if it's white on the edge, maybe we'll just try like a off-white. Which I think is working okay. And then the top, let's make that white for now as well. And here we have our big arrow. So we're going to use the stroke weight to up the weight here. So we get a nice thick black outline, and then we're going to fill that in white. So now it looks a lot more recognizable as a mouse arrow. And what we're going to need to do is take the little tip off. So I'm just going to draw a shape over it. And then I'm going to make that the same color as this background color here. So a nice little neat trick that Illustrator has is using the eyedropper tool, which means that with that new little shape that I've just drawn, if I select this part of the canvas here, it's going to use this same color for this new shape I've just drawn, which is useful. So now that looks like the arrow is actually going in and hitting the canvas. Okay, so it's looking cool, but I think the black that I started with earlier for the easel isn't working. I think maybe we should leave black just for the arrow, so that really stands out. I think if we go too much black and white with the rest of the image, it's just going to look a bit kind of confusing. So now we've ungrouped these. The tricky thing is, it wouldn't be there's only a few pieces here to go back through and to select, but a quick way of doing this is with that piece selected, this little drop down that we have up here, if we go down here, this helps to select similar objects. So with that black fill shape that I've got selected, if I go down here and select fill color, it's going to select everything else in the document that shares that same fill color. So now we have all of those shadowed surfaces, all those blacks now. So we're going to take it down. I wonder if as it is meant to be wood, I wonder if kind of a more of a yellowy orange might work, and that will look nice against the blue background too. Yeah, that looks cool, and it makes sense with the red as well, as if that is a sort of a darker shadowed section of it. So white is where the light hits it, and then you have yellow is the sort of next step along in shadow, and then the red is where it gets most dark on the wood. So I think that's looking really nice. So now the only thing that we have left to do is try to draw in some like a little kind of bloody shape. So I'm going to use the ellipse tool here, and I'm going to use the same red that we've already got in our image. So I'll just use the eyedropper again. And what I'm going to try to do is just draw like an oval shape just close to the arrow. I bring it round at this angle and then move this on top. So now I'm going to have to think about how to get the red going behind it and also in front of it. And I need to bring this shape back in front of it as well. Now, what I'm going to do is, because of this angle here where the sort of the nose, the tip of the arrow is cut off, lines up with these points on the circle, what I can do is just select this one, and if I copy that and I paste it in place, then you get just this section of the circle, which comes over the top of the arrow now, which is a nice neat little trick. So now I'm going to move that back out of the way. So now we've got a little red patch. I think that looks good. Maybe I'm going to move it down just a little bit. I'm just going to use strokes for this. I'm going to draw one path there and make it a red stroke rather than a red fill. And then I'm going to use my stroke window here, increase it slightly, round off the edge, and duplicate it. So I've just held down Option, clicked and dragged to create the exact same shape again. Only now we have it going over the top of our arrow, so I can just reorder the layers of those. So if I hold down Command and square bracket and just cycle through, so now that's going behind it. Let's draw a nice long one going in there. How's that looking? Cool, that's looking good. I mean, I think for start of an artwork, that's looking really nicely. So now what I might go in and do is go in and tidy up some of these points where the anchors meet each other to make sure everything is lined up nicely and perfectly. I'm probably going to keep playing with the color a bit, but I think we've already got a good starting point here. So we're going to be jumping into Photoshop next to look at creating some photorealistic looking artwork. Here we are in Photoshop this time. And for this artwork, this is the idea that we're going to try to create. This is a really simple little sketch that I've done just to show what we're aiming for. A robot hand grabbing a few paintbrushes and the grip's too tight, and so the paintbrushes are snapping and breaking in the grip of the robot hand. So one quick tip for putting together photorealistic artwork is that Envato Elements has a library of 3D objects you can rotate and position before downloading them and bringing them into your composition. So that's what we're aiming for. I've been onto Envato Elements again in their 3D section and found some really good elements to work with to bring this together. So I've already gone on there and brought those different elements into this document that I've got set up here. So we've got this really good robot hand and we've got these few different paintbrushes here. So we're sort of set up and ready to go. Now the fun bit is making it look like the robot hand is holding them, and not only holding them, but it's breaking them from like too much of a pressure in its grip. So first of all, what we need to try and do is separate out these fingers and the thumb of the robot. So there are lots of different ways of doing cutouts in Photoshop. The way I feel most comfortable and I think is gives like the cleanest lines is by using the path, the pen tool. We are going to have path selected, and we're just going to begin drawing around the thumb and the fingers. So I'm using the anchors and to be able to curve it around the different angles of the robot fingers. So clicking and dragging can help you to bend the line. So it doesn't have to be perfect up the top here, because we're not going to have the paintbrushes going like beyond this this part of the image. So now this is a bit where we need to make sure we're getting a good clean line which goes over the outline of these fingers, because this is where the paintbrushes are going to be most seen, between these fingers and the palm there. So we need to make sure we're getting all this bit nice and neat and tidy and as accurate as we can do. So we've drawn our first path there, so now we need to draw this finger and this one. And so this part of the finger is going to be, will end up going behind the paintbrush. So I'm going to draw around sort of from here. I'm going to go the opposite way this time, meet up on in a counterclockwise way. Again, making sure all of this bit's nice and tidy. So now, in your paths window down here, this little thumbnail here, this represents all of these paths that I've just been drawing. So what I need to do is, if you double click on it, and then you can save the path. So path 1 is fine. Actually, let's be thorough about it. Chord fingers for now. Great, so now we've got that, so it's selected this path for us. What we're going to do is make a selection of that. So feather radius 5 pixels, that should do it. So that just kind of softens the edge as we come to select it. So now we have the fingers selected. What we're going to do is duplicate our robot hand, and with the selection made, if we come down here and press the layer mask button, it's going to just make another layer of that, but just of the fingers that we had selected. So if we hide the robot hand behind it, you'll see there we've got our fingers just by themselves, which is looking good. So we move our hand layer to the back, you can see that the fingers are already coming over the paintbrushes, so that's looking great already. So now what we need to do is try to snap some of these paintbrushes and get that part of the image in there. So what we're going to do as well, sort of a bit of a cheat way of doing this. It's not so much a cheat way, it just makes life easier for us. Rather than showing any of the parts where the paintbrushes snap, we're going to hide those behind the fingers and the thumb. So we don't have to get into trying like making it look like splintered wood or anything like that, because the actual split in the wood is going to be hidden by the fingers. So what we're going to do with our first paintbrush selected, I'm just going to move it over here so I can see what we're doing. With this selection tool, the rectangular one, I'm going to just draw a section, maybe something like that. We'll try that for now. Copy that using Command C and paste. There we go. So we've got that top section. I'm going to reselect that first layer and then reselect the shape I just had and delete that section. Only I can't delete it because it's a smart layer, so I need to make it rasterize it so it's pixels. Delete that top bit. So now we have the top part of the brush and the bottom part of the brush. So we're going to move the bottom part down here. I'm going to hide the other brushes so I can see what I'm doing a bit better. Move it down here and twist it something like this angle. Take the top bit. So now I'm going to get a bit of the purple out the top so you can see that these two things, these two parts of brush were once the same. So that's looking good already. So now we're going to try the next one. So I'll turn that layer on. Same thing again, using the rectangular selection tool. I'm going to copy that bit and delete it. But again, I need to make it into pixels because you can't delete things that are smart objects. It won't let you do that. So delete that bit, deselect, and paste in the new one. So place that there for now. Bring in the bottom part. Just twist it slightly. I think if we left it at a completely the angle it was at, it would look a bit too sort of rigid and fake. So bit of a twist helps it to kind of make it feel a bit more jaunty and like it's actually realistically been broken. And this one, only this time I'm going to remember to make it a raster layer before. So this time maybe split it about there, copy, delete that top bit, deselect that, paste in that top bit again, and we'll have this one coming out the side over here now. Maybe back that way a little bit. So now we've got this nice big brush to work with for our last one. Rasterize it first. Split it about there. Copy that, delete that top bit, paste it back in. Bring the bottom bit down here. I'm going to hide it behind that yellow one. I like that yellow bit of brush coming through. There you go. That's already looking very realistic and looking great already. So from here, what I might try and do is add in some shadows around these parts of the brushes and things, just using the brush tool and things like that, and maybe go on to add a brightly colored background as well. But that's at least you can begin to see how you can create some really good looking photorealistic imagery using some of those 3D elements from Envato Elements and then bringing them into Photoshop using some clever ordering of layers and just choosing cleverly where you kind of split things and how you can hide things behind layers, and it kind of makes life a lot easier for you because we haven't had to get into making it look like splintered wood or anything. So that's a neat job already. Hey everyone, here we are again back in Illustrator. This little sketch up here in the top left is the thing we're going to be aiming for. It's something that I discussed earlier when we were coming up with ideas. The idea of using the HAL robot from Space Odyssey to get across this looming eerie presence, and we're going to use HAL within a gold frame to get the creative like art side of there, as if someone's sort of framed HAL and put it on the wall in this kind of quite creepy way. So this is what we're aiming for, like a HAL within a gold frame. I've already started to set it up in Photoshop using a golden frame from Envato Elements again. So now what we need to do is create HAL to go within it. So to do that, what I'm going to do is get a rough measurement of this space here. So to do that, I'm just going to get the rectangle tool, and as I draw over the little the numbers there, kind of annotations, tell me that it's about 54 by 76 millimeters. So I don't actually need that. I'm going to delete that back into Illustrator and create 54 by 76 millimeters, a rectangle of that shape. So that's good. We've got that size now. So I'm going to make that bigger because I was looking for the ratio. It doesn't need to be the exact size. And I'm going to make that a black background. And then now what we're going to be doing is using gradients and transparencies and different things like that in Illustrator to help create this, the red dot for the circle here for HAL. So first off, I've just drawn this circle here. Now we're going to use gradients to try and get this red glow and the kind of yellow dot in the center there. So with it selected, I'm going to go down here and select the little gradient fill. And then my gradient window opens over here on the right. What I'm going to do is for the outside part of the gradient, firstly I need to have the radial gradient selected. At the moment it's linear, so we've got black and white, so you can see it goes from black to white. But if I select radial, then the white goes to the center and the black goes around the edge. So we've got black selected for the outside. So now we're gonna, if we click along this bar here, we can start to add in more colors. So firstly, we're gonna add in a red. So to get some, using a CMYK document here, so to get a nice red 100, 100 in the M and Y channels, magenta and yellow, gets this really nice red. So the funny thing is that when you do that, then you have this in-between step here between the red and the black, which can sometimes, well, already here, like it's kind of getting this weird like grayish brown, which is not what we want at all. If you come over here to look at the HAL one, the reference that I'm using here, there's none of this kind of grayish brown that I've got here. So what we can do to avoid that is use some magenta and yellow in these channels. If we turn that up to 100 as well, and we use 100 in our black channel, then that gets rid of it, because it's sort of, as it blends from this black to this red, it's already got the it has the hundreds in common in the yellow and the magenta channel, so it avoids that nasty like brownish grey colour. So now where do we need to go from here? We just need a nice, so it goes like black. So if we move this, slide this black section along, it then brings the black closer into the centre. So that's looking a little closer to where we're going already. And then a nice big wash of red, and then finishing with yellow for the dot. So if we put 100 in the yellow, that's looking good, although that dot is kind of quite blurry and quite big. There's a definite like yellow centered to the actual version. So to get that, I wonder if we slide these different tabs along the center here. Yeah, that's beginning to work. If I slide that out from the side, maybe the yellow dot slightly bigger maybe. So it's all just experimentation really, but I think that's probably pretty much done it. Maybe slightly smaller on the dot. Great, so that's looking good. I think we've got a really good basis for the red dot part of our own HAL here. So now what we're going to do is add in the silvery little kind of cuff thing going around the edge here. So what I'm going to do to create a circle like exactly in the same place, if I Command C to copy that and then Command B, it places it directly behind so it duplicates what I just copied and places it directly behind in the exact same position. So that's very useful, but it's colored in the same way as our previous layer. So if I make this slightly bigger, just make it yellow so you can see it. So what we're going to do is go for this gray kind of metallic look. So I'm going to go back to make it a gradient again. Only this time I'm going to use a linear gradient and just quite simply make it grey on this side. So to get a nice grey, maybe just 20 in the black channel, and then change this one. So this is still based on our previous gradient, so it's got the hundreds in the yellow and the magenta. So if we take that out, maybe put it to 40. It's very subtle, but it just goes subtly from like a lighter grey over to a darker grey around the corner here. So now what we're going to do as well, to get this nice little extra bit of light which goes around the edge, which sometimes goes a bit harder and sometimes a bit softer, what we're going to do is add in a gradient to the stroke. So if we make the stroke a bit bigger, and then what we're going to do is use the previous gradient that we just had, only now we're going to add in some white sections to it as well. So if I click on it and hold down Option and drag it, it duplicates it. And then I'm going to duplicate a darker section and a lighter one again, and another darker one. One more light for good luck. And you can see around the edge we've got these lovely little highlights of going between light and dark. So I think that stroke's slightly too thick, so I'm going to bring that down slightly. I think maybe the actual the fill of this could be slightly darker as well. So what I'm going to do is add in another little section of the gradient here. Maybe make it darker, go to like 50 or something. Let's go even for 60. Great, so we're nearly there already. So I think the only difference here which could really help to lift this is to add these little bits of highlights, kind of reflection from the lights and the things that are just kind of catching the sort of the lens here. So what we're going to do to create that is with our first layer, our first circle selected, I'm going to just select that top point. I'm going to copy it and paste in place. So Shift, Option, Command and V to do that. And so it's given us just for top. So these 3 points here. It's a little easier to see if I turn it into a stroke. And what I'm going to do is hold down Shift and just make it slightly smaller. So now it's sort of constrained to these proportions. So it's still aligning exactly halfway to our current shape there. What I'm going to do is make it white. Come into strokes in the profile down here, use these different widths, these kind of preset widths to help to kind of bend and make the shape of the stroke slightly different. So I'm going to use this top one so it goes nice and thick in the middle. Make that slightly thicker. And I'm going to come into Object, Expand again. So now that's no longer that stroke, it's now a filled in shape. So now what I'm going to do, so as you can see, these lights are kind of cut up into 3 different sections. So what I'm going to do to achieve that look is just draw some little basic shapes over top of it, and then using Pathfinder in a moment. And I'm doing this randomly because I think if I did it too kind of methodically, then it might make it look, I might not kind of capture the right like vibe of the lights. Like they are going to be not reflecting off in a completely perfect way, in a completely like aligned way. So I've just drawn that slightly randomly. And what I'm going to do is have these three selected and the previous shape selected, and go into Pathfinder and use this one here, the minus front one. I'm going to go into here and use intersect. I'm going to go into here and use exclude. So now I have that shape selected, I'm going to use the scissors tool here to just cut out some of these more random shapes like this. I'm going to go back together in a moment and piece them back together. So now it's split up our path into these different sections. So the gaps in between these lights here of what I'm trying to create here, I'm going to delete those. And then use the pen tool to join up these different sections. And to get this kind of curved off edge again, I'm going to have this point selected and then use the like the round little tool that Illustrator gives you. So how to do a similar thing here. So this one isn't going to work because I think of how the anchors and the handles work around these things, and Illustrator will only give you that rounding tool if it's happy with all of those. But so instead, if you just do as I did, then add in some extra anchor points, and then you can just delete those ones, and it gives you this nice curve instead. So now we've got these three highlights. It's too bright having them completely bright white. So if we use the opacity here and bring them down to maybe like 50%. I think that's looking pretty good. So now that we have that all sorted, I think that's looking good enough to try out in our gallery image. So I'm going to save this. Call it HAL. And then come back into Photoshop. I'm going to paste it in place here. Use place linked. Here it is. I use Artbox. So now, here we go. Here's our HAL. And make it nice and like small enough for the image, and then put it behind. There we go. And there's HAL on the wall of a gallery. So now I think from here I'll probably go back into Illustrator and maybe add a few more lights in, a bit more kind of definition, maybe make this outside strip slightly darker as well, and kind of make it a bit more kind of punchy and dramatic, but that's looking good from there. Now we've got our three artworks,
I'm going to take them into InDesign to try out on our cover template. This course is made possible by Envato Elements, a really easy to use subscription that gives you unlimited access to millions of creative assets that are available to download and use in your project right away. Things like fonts, graphics, stock photos, 3D elements, and so much more. Click the link in the description below to learn more about Envato Elements today.
Here we are in InDesign. We're going to start designing our actual magazine cover now. So the artwork that we've been creating, we're going to drop it in to these templates that I've got already set up here. So just to take you through the template quickly, like all magazines, we have things which are in common with majority of magazines. So to start at the top, the nice big masthead for the title of the magazine. So I've decided to call this fictional one that we're working on here thematic, with a little tagline to go above it, which helps to describe the sort of the brand and what the magazine's about. And then other things that we've got on here, we've got the month, the like issue information and the price, and then some flashes down the bottom. So these are other stories that are in the issue of the magazine which you want to draw attention to on the cover. It's not the main cover story, but other things in the magazine that the editor wants to point out are inside. So we call these flashes in The Economist. I think they must have different names in lots of different places. So one thing I haven't included is a barcode, because this is a fictional magazine. I've decided to not include one because barcodes do tend to look a bit ugly and like an impractical thing to have to include. So I have the luxury of not including it here, so decided to not have to deal with that. So you'll notice if I turn on the grid quickly, I've got a 6-column grid to work with as well, which I find really helpful to have a grid, even though it's a cover and you're not like working with strict like columns of text, and it's not like there's lots of just individual photos we're going to need to get on here. I think having columns in the background, having some rules to work with is a really useful thing. So I'm sure they're going to be useful as we start to drop in our artwork and find out where we can start to put our titles and things. So to get to work on that, if I show you this first one, this is the title that I'm working with and the subhead for our first artwork, which is the canvas, the mouse arrow coming in and hitting the canvas. So let's get to work on that. I'm going to drop that in. So I've got this box already created to drop in and place the artwork. Cool. So as you can see already, the artwork is sort of coming up quite big on the page. So what I'm going to do, obviously I need to adjust and place all this type in a second, and I'm going to probably turn it to white. But before I do that, I think the artwork is already sitting too big on the page. So I'm going to go into Illustrator and make the image slightly smaller. Let's try that, save that. Back into InDesign, and then in my links panel, update the link. So now it's coming below the issue information we've got there. So I think it's probably looking a bit better at that height. I may adjust it again, but at least now I think we're in a closer ballpark. So I think because this image is, there's nothing which is that symmetrical about it. I think when you have an image which is very like symmetrical, having it completely centered and then trying to center your type and everything else below it is a really good idea and a good thing to do. But because this has kind of got the weight coming in from this angle, and then we have a gap down here where there's nothing to do with the image, I think this is going to be a really good spot to actually put the type, and it will hopefully feel quite balanced. So I think that's going to be too big. I'm probably going to have to stack forced perspective on top of each other. I'll make it slightly smaller first. And let's make it white. And I'm going to use our grid to align it so it comes into like sort of aligns to the center of it, but I'm going to have it the text aligning left. It's still a bit too big for one line, so I think I'm going to drop it down onto 2 lines. And then I'm going to need to get the subhead below it and align that to the left. Pull it out slightly so it can all fit. Let's make that white. Okay, that's looking good. I'll come back and fine tune that in a moment. I'm just going to turn all the rest of the text white.
Here's a general tip for using typography on your cover. Use a 5:2 ratio for when you're sizing your headline and your subhead. By this I mean if your headline is 50 points, make your subhead 20 points. This will help to create some balance and some typographic hierarchy in your cover.
And then we have this little plus symbol down here as well, which we could use as white. Let's just do it white for now. So just a note on choosing color of text for covers. I'm quite a purist, I think, when it comes to choosing the colors for magazine cover for the titles and things. I think it's nice to kind of keep everything the same color. I think maybe when you start like chopping things up and having different colors for different parts of the text and the title and things, it can look a little sort of disjointed. I think having everything the same color keeps it all cohesive. I mean, as much as anything, we've got several different typefaces on here as well. So I think if you start adding in different colors for each of them, I think it could start feeling a bit messy. So that's typically how I would approach choosing the color for type, is to keep everything the same. But obviously feel free to play around with that. So now for the spacing between the title and the subhead, what I want to do is just have some sort of rule which is going to keep me happy. So I want the title to be like a cap height away from the subhead. So I'm using the cap height of the subhead to do that. So I've just duplicated the layer so I can see, just not perfectly, but you can just see that. So now if I delete this line, you can see that the subtitle is now a cap height away from the title. So if I take that one away, it feels like a sensible distance to have the subtitle away from the title there. So I think that looks really cool. That's a strong looking cover. So that's looking great. I'm going to carry on now and go on to the next artwork, which is our the robot hand crushing the paintbrushes. So this is the title we're working with this time, and the same subtitle again. So let's place it in. So I already know with this one that it's my hope to put already that's working nicely. The paintbrush, I want to bring it over the top of the masthead. We're going to have to work out what we do with the issue info, because it's going to go behind the brush as well. So we'll get back to that in a moment.
Here's a practical tip for positioning your artwork on the cover. Sometimes you might struggle to position the shape of your artwork with the space you have available. Or you might be looking to make as much impact as possible with your artwork and make it as big as possible. So one thing you could consider is overlapping part of the artwork over the top of your masthead. This is something a number of magazines do. Newsweek, for instance, does it very effectively.
And I also I don't want just a white background there. I was kind of thinking maybe a yellow might work quite nicely with this, because then it will help with the black, with some black type. Yellow and black has that nice like sort of emergency, urgent feeling, which I think will kind of work quite nicely with this image. So what I'm going to do is duplicate this layer. So now if you come into layers here, you'll see I've got 2 of this top layer. So I want to delete the image which is inside that. So now it's just a blank rectangle, and I'm going to use a nice yellow color, send that to the back. So now let's go. I've got a yellow background and the robot hand is on top in its own layer on top of everything else. So that is going over the masthead in a nice way. It's blocking out the A, but not so much that it's now illegible. You can still read thematic quite easily. And so now we need to work out what we're going to do with the issue info. I think and hope that if we just move it to the left slightly and have that £6 just poking out from behind, it still feels like it's kind of naturally quite centered, as if it might be more info behind here. So it doesn't feel like it's sort of suddenly lopsided. I think that works quite nicely still. So now we need to work out what we're actually going to do with the actual title. So let's bring those to the front for the first thing to do. So what I think I'm going to try is having the title in this space to the right, so it's almost mirroring the robot arm on this side, having the title in this gap over here. So that will, I think it will help bring some symmetry to the cover. So I'm going to use our 6-column grid and use the right 2 columns to align everything. So I'm going to maybe go something like, let's try 56. And start to stack this on top of each other. So yeah, the post-human movement, that makes sense with how those words kind of break from line to line. I mean, you wouldn't want the post on one line, human on the next, and movement. I think post-human needs to be on the same line. And then going to make the subhead just range below it centered as well. I think one rule as well that I try to stick to with laying out type is it's a personal preference. I think, again, with different designers, I never like to right align anything. I think that's why I like to work with a grid, because if you had text going over to the right, like we have here, like on the right side of an image, I would always just use the grid to have it aligned to the left, or to center align it, which might make it feel a bit more balanced, which I think it does here. I think right aligning things tends to, for one thing, be just marginally harder to read. And I think that this is kind of why you have a grid, so it makes sense and it feels like it's naturally, you can still align things to the left when you're on a grid, and it still kind of feels cohesive with the rest of the design. So I'm going to use the same little trick as I did on our previous cover with getting the spacing between these two. So I'm going to use that cap height again. Great, so Alex, I think that works quite nicely. The title sort of balances out with that part of the robot, and it's sort of roughly centered as well, like kind of in line with the hand and the arm, and makes use of this space. So I think that looks nice. And also, we could try and put it like below down here. Then we would have to make the robot hand a lot smaller, and it would lose impact. I think at this size, it all works really nicely. So onto our last one, which is the HAL design. So the title we have to work with is another reference from a film, when Hal says something like, "I'm sorry, Dave, I'm afraid I can't do that," only in a far creepier way than I just did it there. So we've just changed that to, "I'm sorry, Dave, I'm afraid I can't draw that," instead, to kind of link in the art creative aspect of this. So let's bring in the artwork and work out how we can use the title on this one. Okay, so I think because, like I said in that first image, this is nice and symmetrical, like the image sits like bang in the vertical center, and the image itself is very symmetrical, like the frame is all very symmetrical, nice circle in the middle. So what I'm going to try to do is align these things beneath it, and have everything kind of as like symmetrical feeling as I can. So to start with, I think for a title that's as long as this, for a headline as long as this, I think having it in lowercase is going to help just make it slightly more legible for one thing. And I'm going to center it. Maybe let's try 52, and I'm going to try and get it all on one line and have the sub going on one line below it. Have that center aligned as well. So with this one, I think if I did the same trick as I've done with the last one with having it the cap height away, it's going to be too close because the descenders and different parts of this title, I think it's going to feel like it's bumping into each other. So I'm just going to sort of just eyeball it really, make it just choose where it's going to sit by how it kind of looks and feels. I'm not going to use a rule on this one. I think that feels like a kind of an appropriate distance away there already. So that looks really cool already. I'm going to try it out in white text. Black text does make sense because there's black in the image. So I think black text tying into the black of the image does work, but it does feel quite dark. And I wonder if it was all white, it might kind of pop a bit more. So I think that looks cool. Yeah, I think I'm going to go with it in white. I think it just kind of helps to sort of lift the image and make it look a slightly more exciting looking cover. Okay, here we are with our final 3 magazine covers. If I do say so myself, I think there's some really nice work here. I think there's 3 nice ones to choose from, which is hopefully what I'm going to do now, sort of end on one which I think is the best. If I was forced to choose one to go to print out of the 3, which one I would choose. So I'll just start talking through the pros and cons of each. I think the one on the left here is the block colors and the nice black and white arrow hitting the canvas there. I think it feels nice and strong and powerful. There's a really nice punch to it. Because of how the art actually sits on the page, then we've been able to get the title reasonably large as well, which just helps to make the whole thing feel quite punchy and nice and like extra. So the only thing which bothers me slightly is I feel like this like space over here on the left, it feels slightly unbalanced. Like there's quite a lot going on over to the right, particularly the bottom right with the title. If I was being pernickety, maybe I'd go back and make the title just a touch smaller and maybe try and take the sub onto 3 lines instead, so it doesn't quite come out so far to the right. But I think overall it's very strong and looks really good. The robot hand one, I love how the robot hand comes in from the crop of the actual edge of the magazine and how that interacts with the cover, and then how the paintbrush goes up and covers the masthead up there. I really like how artwork can interact with different features and furniture on magazine covers. So I think that one's a really successful one. And like I said, when we're in InDesign, I like the black and the yellow. It has a nice like urgent kind of warning feel, which goes really nicely with the theme of the story as well. And lastly, the Space Odyssey design on the right, I think that works really nicely as a cover. I really like how this distance is like a similar distance to this. I think everything sits nicely and feels really nice and balanced. I like how the title, even though we've had to make it quite small because it's such a long title, I think it holds its space really nicely and it doesn't kind of feel too piddly down there. I think it works really nicely as an overall cover. I think that the Space Odyssey theme and the HAL robot, I think that's only a reference that some people are going to get. Not everyone has seen that film, obviously. So I think on some people, I'm particularly teamed with that headline as well, like a specific reference to the film. Lots of people won't know those references, which I think for a magazine cover, you need as many people to understand and get what you're doing as much as possible. So I think to start kind of whittling these down, if I had to start making a choice, I'd probably say I'd count that one out of the running, even though it does look good. So then back between these two, the choice of these two, I think I would probably have to go with the mouse and the canvas, mostly based on how the arrow and the mouse is it's linked to, I think conceptually it works nicely. I think when you're using these AI software, you're using them on a laptop mostly, and on phones too, obviously. But I think the arrow is a nice like motif for the digital AI side of things. I think a robot hand, while it is AI, it's not the sort of form of AI that we're actually talking about in the story. We're talking about more like computers and things. So I think the arrow works conceptually better on that front. And I think it's the bold, striking colours just make it nice and impactful. Having said that, I still have a very soft spot for this one. I think it's very successful, and you could actually argue that robot hands, even though it's not the exact type of AI that we're talking about, it's a metaphor, and that's the beauty of magazine covers. It's not telling the entire story. It's just like it's a hook. It's a way in to actually entice people, intrigue people into reading the story. So, having said that, I still think this one works really nicely.
Thank you all for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the Envato Tuts Plus YouTube channel for more.